So joining us now is Joel Rubin, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. Joel, before we dive into what's recently unfolded, you've helped us explain why all of this is happening before, but of course, people may have missed it. Can you explain why Russia's president would want to invade Ukraine in the first place, and also why now?
Vladimir Putin is an autocrat, and he runs Russia with an iron fist. And the biggest fear that he has, the biggest threat to his rule, is that there will be democracies along his border. And Ukraine is a democracy. Ukraine undermines his argument that he has to be an authoritarian at home. And for him and Russia, he wants to kind of grow their influence. And having a democracy next to him does not allow that to happen. It keeps Russia contained. And for all of those reasons of great power politics, he wants to move on Ukraine if he does, ultimately because he wants to ensure that Russia has more influence in the region and prevents democracies from flowering. That's what's driving this moment that we're in right now.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to what the Ukrainian president's statement has said and the walking back of the statement for a potential date of a potential invasion. It feels like we've been kind of playing a guessing game for a couple of weeks now. How reliable is the information that the president shared? I know he's saying it's just coming from media reports. What media? Why now? What do we know about that?
Well, what we do know is that the United States is engaged in an information war with Russia right now to demonstrate that Russia's actions are illegitimate and to also highlight when Russia is trying to use false information or fake pretexts, such as a couple of weeks ago, the idea of a week ago of unleashing a video showing that Ukraine was attacking Russia, using those to justify an invasion. And so Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, is kind of caught in the middle. He is trying to keep his population calm while the United States and Russia are competing on the global stage to win the narrative and to try to, from the American perspective, prevent an invasion of Ukraine. So President Zelensky, he's getting the information as he can, trying to make sure his population stays calm. And it's clear that right now he understands that the Ukrainian people are under a dire threat of a Russian invasion, and he is getting his population ready for that eventuality.
Right. And I know a common theme throughout all this is that Russia has consistently denied plans to invade, even with the reports of that video that was meant to come out and scare people. But Russia has also released a statement and said that it could take unspecific military technical action unless a range of demands are met. Breakdown, I feel like there's text here and then there's subtext here. So what does that technically mean? And then how are we all supposed to interpret that?
So what Russia is arguing in terms of policy issues is that it does not want Ukraine to become part of NATO. NATO is the alliance that the United States has with our European allies. It was the result of the Cold War after World War II, a sort of new security architecture, largely to protect European countries from Russian invasion. Ukraine is not part of NATO, and it's possible down the road they could apply for NATO membership. Russia is saying, we don't want you to be part of NATO. And the Ukrainians are saying, stop threatening us. So what Vladimir Putin is now doing is actually paradoxically encouraging Ukrainians to be interested in having the support of NATO rather than moving them away. And so Russia is trying to find an argument, any kind of argument, ultimately to assert its will, to expand its power towards the West, to expand its power into Ukraine. And if it argues technical military actions, that's essentially trying to find a way to fish and see what they can catch in order to give a public justification. Russia doesn't want to be seen as doing an unjustifiable illegal act, but that's what this would be. And if Russia does invade, it would become a pariah state globally because this is an unwarranted action. And if they have concerns about NATO, they should negotiate at the table about those, not put military pressure for a political outcome on Ukraine.
And we've heard about the U.S. response, troops going, troops on standby. So what do we know right now about how prepared the U.S. is to respond if Russia does invade Ukraine?
Well, the American response has been clear, and President Biden has been very clear that the United States will not be fighting a war against Russian troops on Ukrainian soil. But what we are doing is we are putting our troops into countries like Poland and Romania that are NATO allies to ensure that they feel safe and that they are protected from any further Russian invasion. What we're also doing in addition to these movements is providing military supplies to the Ukrainian military to fight its war against Russia if it has to. And the critical piece of this, the deterrence piece, is enacting a very strong sanctions package that we will be conducting with our European allies in concert with them to really punish the Russian economy, to go after its banks, its financial sector, to, in many ways, tank the Russian economy, and then to add export controls, which are sanctions against commercial exports that can go into the Russian economy, and try to really punish the Russian economy and make sure that Vladimir Putin understands that there will be a cost, military from within Ukraine, economic from the sanctions, and then, of course, diplomatic, globally being isolated. And that's really where the President Biden is on this, and not sending troops, but making sure that there are high costs if Russia invades.
Joel Rubin, a very complicated issue that spans a lot of years playing out right in front of us. So I always appreciate you coming here and being willing to explain all of this to us. I'm sure we will be talking a lot in the next couple of days. So thank you for spending the time.